Hello and welcome to your final rigging tutorial. In this video we're going to be looking at painting weights. From the last videos we've done some creating joints, we've created some IK handles, and we've created these controllers as well so far. So all we need to do now is make sure that this rig is working properly by making sure that we get the right things moving when. So as you can see, we get some weird things happening in certain places, but we probably wouldn't come down that low anyway when moving our hips down. The hands all work nicely as well. We haven't got a great deal of fixing to do really, other than maybe on the shoulder when we come a bit too close. We've got a little bit happening there that we can get rid of. I'm just going to zero those back out. And then the same with the knees really. We have a little bit of deformation that we can kind of fix just around here really. We would get a bit more of that happening as well with that controller. Awesome, but for the most part there's not a great deal to fix here. We have got a bit of fixing on the head to do, so that's where we're going to spend the majority of our time today. So we might as well get straight in it. What I am going to do is I'm going to hide everything. I don't want to see everything, I just want to see the curves, just so I can test things out nicely, and then I want to show the polygons because that is our mesh. Once I've got both of those up, you'll notice that I don't have my outliner open because we don't particularly need it, because this is all just one model, one mesh, which is nice and handy for us. And we can go and head up to skin at the top, and we can open up the options box for paint skin weights, and then we get this options box that pops up. I'm going to try and get that on the bit there, which is nice. Awesome, that's exactly what we want. So you'll notice there's a few different things on here, so we can see all of the joints that are connected to this model, and for the most part it's all fine and we don't need to do a great deal, but there are a couple of parts of this model that I do want to make sure that we have a good amount of painting to do. So we have our neck and our so we have attached this controller to the neck too. So when this moves or this rotates, we want all of this to be white. So you'll notice that the value here is 0, which means we would take away parts of this, which is fine, and that's what we want. We want to start cleaning up around here, because only a little bit of our neck is going to move with our head, and that's going to be at the very top of our neck here. So I'm just going to make sure I get rid of some of this, because we don't want this to be affected by this controller or this joint, the movement of this joint being our neck 2 joint. So I'm just going to make sure that we've got all of this painted black until we get to a point like this where we start to probably we need to be a little bit more careful with what we're doing. So we do have a bit of creasing on our neck and a little bit of stretching as well, so it's important to make sure that we do get that for the most part. Our head is going to be completely set to white, which is fine, and we can do that, and we'll probably want a fairly sudden sort of area to not be moving. So you'll notice there that I ended up painting on the bottom of the jaw, which we don't want. That's going to be completely white on the jaw there as well. And we're getting to a point now where I can start to change the size of the brush. So to do that, I can hold the B button on the keyboard, and I can just click and drag as well to resize the brush. So now I'm going to come in a bit closer and get a bit deeper into this painting. Just make it all nice and neat so that it's a bit more uniform. If something goes up, then everything else behind it needs to, we need to change it back to a black colour. We're starting to get to a point now where we could start painting things a bit whiter. Let's start bringing this up a bit. Get rid of some of this area as well here. Got a bit of grey happening here. So some of the grey is very subtle. So here you can see that this is all grey, but it's a very subtle grey. So we can just paint that, and it will go pitch black afterwards. It can be fairly difficult to see at some points, but for the most part this is looking fairly neat, other than when we get here. So I'm going to make the brush painting a bit smaller. I'm going to come in and I'm just going to make sure that this is a bit neater around here. In fact, I'm going to get rid of a lot of this. And then we get a bit closer up here, just start cleaning this bit up a bit more. So each part doesn't need to be completely black or completely white. We can have some grey, and for the most part this is mainly grey around here. I am going to set the value of my brush back up to 1 so that I can start making this proper, well, completely painted white, so it's completely affected, and that is going to be quite rigid. As you'll know, our heads are very they don't manipulate much other than the skin on them, so this is going to be pretty rock solid here, especially things like the teeth as well. Luckily this guy doesn't have eyes, because we would also need to make sure those are painted completely white, and they're often a different mesh as well. So because our head is completely solid, we need to show that here as well. We can keep some of this grey, don't get me wrong. It is fine to do that as well, because especially around the edges here where we get a little less movement. So I'm just making sure that the brightest whites are completely bright, and then the darkest blacks are completely dark, and then the greys are always going to be a midway between. So I'm painting this, I can be a bit more careful with it now. Coming in here and just making sure that the jaw doesn't move. It's going to be the skin under it, underneath the jaw, that does move. So I'm just gonna come out here, follow this round. Oh, I've just gone into the head. Make sure that all of this is, otherwise you're going to see some movement on the teeth as well, and in the mouth, which when you come to render this sort of thing and you've put nice textures on, that's all going to be moving, and it will look a little bit strange in the render. So that's all looking fairly decent. Oh, a bit grey there. Cool. Just going to follow this part of the jaw up as well. So up this line and then fill all the rest in and paint it white. And then the same up here. Getting a few greys that I want to get rid of. Awesome. So we could start to just come down the back here to a point that we want to see a bit of manipulation from the movement. Just make sure that's a bit bigger. Just make sure I'm going over all of this, just making sure it's all pretty rigid. Right, so I'm going to go back to my selection tool for the minute now. What we had before was that the back of the head was almost kind of well, it was like being manipulated, it was being pulled and stretched, which we're not getting now, which is what we need. But you'll notice now that on the jaw, it's we're getting a bit of something weird happening. So we need to probably paint this a bit more underneath here. So if I set that to 0, and then if I pull that back, we're getting a weird bit of movement there. So we probably need that coming with us as well. So just undo that. Go back to my painting weights tool. Grab that. Okay, let's select this and then go back to our painting weights tool. And we're just going to go into here, be a bit more, give ourselves a bit more area to bring with us. I think we'll probably have to come right up until here, really, from what we saw happening there. We'll start bringing this up here as well, rounding out, because we don't want, if we're taking it with us, we need to make sure it is following along with the rest of the movement. And we can pull this up here as well. And then I'm going to give this another go. And we see a bit more of a natural movement. Granted, we can see some things happening on the jaw here. So that's telling me that some of it's still a little bit grey and we're not taking it as well as we could be. And the same at the back here. So I'm going to make sure this is all 0 again. And I'm going to go select the mesh and go back to this tool here. So we can see where it's a bit darker in areas. It's very, very subtle, so you do need to keep a watchful eye out for this stuff as well, because it is fairly easy to miss. This area around the back's fine. Probably just give it a bit more area to not be pulled along, as opposed it's moving with it. Cool. Cool. What I could typically do as well is, just to be a bit of a cheat, is what I could do is I could grab face mode in here. I'm going to cheat massively here. Grab all of that. Go to vertex and go back to this tool here. And then I can flood that area as well. Let's go to that. Oh no. And vertex. No. Vertex mode didn't seem to want to do that for us there. Object mode, and then we get back to this. Yeah. So for some reason it wouldn't let me just select this area here, so I could flood it all, so we don't get any of that weird movement happening. There might be a bit up here as well, actually, because I've not been in. Awesome. And what you'll notice as well, so if I paint just across here, and then I go to move this, we'll get all of that's rotating from it as well, so that we get a bit broken, which we don't want. Excuse me. So if I go back to painting on this guy, that's all gone, beautiful. And I'm just gonna double check all of this area here, because I don't want to have anything moving that shouldn't be. Just make sure it's all, we're not getting greys where we should have completely whites, or where we should have complete dark black areas. I think we're just about there with the head. So I'm pretty happy with that. So it's folding where it should be underneath here. Could be maybe a little bit cleaner with it. Because we are getting a bit of clipping when we do that. Which is fine, but oh, we are getting a bit of something weird happening there as well. So I'm not yet done. And I'm just going to make sure that this here is painted appropriately as well. Maybe right across here as well. Okay, and then I'm going to give this another go, see if this works. So around the back here, we've probably not got enough grey area, and we need to start putting a bit more grey in the back here. Around the front, that's all looking alright to me. What about this way and that way? Okay, something's happening with the tooth here. Is it happening on another teeth as well? Looks like it is a little bit, yeah. So, looks like we've got a bit more painting to do, which is fine. It does take a little bit of time just to get the right areas painted and make sure it's all painted accordingly. Like I said, I normally just put some music on him and listen to that while I do this. It can be quite therapeutic if you spend enough time doing it as well. I'm just going to check that again. We're not getting anything happening with that tooth now either, so that's good. What about up here? That's fine as well. So on both of these, I'll just set those back to 0, and I'm just going to paint around the back of this again. But this time I'm going to change the value to about 0.5. And just start bringing that on here. It's probably a bit less than what's already there. So let's go for 0.3. That's a bit better. I'm just going to have the back of the neck fold a bit more. And again, just like before, we want it to be we want it to connect up fairly well. So we don't want to see any grey parts getting darker and then a bit brighter. I am going to be painting under here as well. So I'm completely replacing what is already there with a 0.3 of what we've got here. So we're still getting a bit of folding. I'm going to bring that up here, and then that should have a fairly nice effect on it, which we can check again. So I'm quite liking the front there. The back, the back, sorry. We are getting a bit of a lump there, which is fine, but we could probably get that a bit neater there as well. So if I go back into this and just make sure that we're getting all of that the same colour. Make sure that we're not getting any jagged edges as well. So if you go down one, you continue on that line. And also we're getting little areas that are going a bit darker in here. So we want to make sure that those are all going to be grey and not a darker shade of grey than what we're using. In fact, what it might be useful to do instead would be to put this in a position like this, for example, and then go ahead and paint the weights from here so that we can see what's being manipulated and what we need to kind of add a bit of something to. So we're getting a few weird shades of grey here. Make sure we're going along these edges and we're not having any weird stuff happening either. Just get a bit of a maybe a 0.1 now, and go around here as well at the bottom here, just to have a bit less happening. And again, we're getting a bit of a darker colour there, so I'm just going to go over that with the 0.1 that I've just selected, just to replace what we already have. And then you can see that these shapes are slowly becoming a bit more right. Awesome. I think we're getting a fairly good sort of shade here. And it is gradual as well. And because I've been quite harsh with so I've got quite whole decimals here as well, I know that I can go back to 3 on the value and paint over areas that I might have missed before. So over here, again, a bit of movement in places here that I just don't seem completely happy with. Because we don't want to go darker and then get brighter again. We want to be gradually getting darker as we go down here. Alright, so that's looking fairly decent to me. I would spend a bit more time on this, but for your guys' tutorial's sake, you probably don't want to spend an hour watching me do this when I've gone over the principles of how we do it and why. So now what we have, if I go back to this tool, this should have a fairly decent, yeah, we're not getting that big crease in it like we were before, which is good. We're just getting a bit of a crease where it would probably fold over at the back of someone's head. And then the same at the front here. We could probably go a bit further around here because that still looks like quite a fleshy part. But other than that, we've got a fairly good going for the hardest part of the body here, our heads. So I hope you've all learnt something from this and you're all able to get on well with painting some weights. And that is rigging over for us now. So we'll be moving on to some bigger sort of softwares and doing a bit more complex things with a bit more in terms of numbers than anything else. Just going to check that on there, and I'm really happy with that actually. That's gone pretty well. Other than that bit that I said that would probably go further down with, it's looking decent in terms of the head not moving. It's not stretching at all. It's just how far down we go with that, which needs a bit of work on there. So take it easy guys, and I'll see you in the next one where we're going to be looking into Houdini and doing some pyro and fluid effects. Alright, take it easy guys. Bye bye.